Imagine you are sitting in a therapist's office. You have been coming here for months, maybe years. You have talked about what happened. You have gone through it in detail. The events, the people, the timeline. You understand intellectually exactly why you are the way you are. Your therapist understands it. You can explain it clearly to anyone who asks. And yet, something still happens in your chest when you hear a certain tone of voice. Something still closes down in your body when you walk into a room that feels like a room from before. You still wake at 3 a.m. with your heart already racing before you have had a single thought. You still freeze in situations that your conscious mind knows are completely safe. You have done the work. You know the story. You understand the why. So why does your body still not know that it is over? The answer to that question is one of the most important things I will ever tell you on this channel. And it begins with the fact that most people, and even some therapists, do not fully understand. Trauma does not live primarily in the mind. It lives in the body. And the body has a completely different memory system from the mind. A memory system that is older, deeper, faster, and that does not respond to conversation, insight, or understanding. Today, I want to take you inside that system. The neuroscience, the biology, the specific mechanisms by which your body stores and replays experiences that your conscious mind has long since processed. And, most importantly, what actually works to change it. Because understanding this, really understanding this, can change your entire relationship to your own symptoms and your entire understanding of what healing actually requires. I am glad you are here. Let us begin. Before we go into the neuroscience, I need to establish something foundational, because there is a widespread misunderstanding about what memory actually is, and that misunderstanding is at the root of why so many people feel like they have done the work and still cannot heal. When most people think about memory, they think about narrative memory, the story, the timeline, the account of what happened that you can retrieve, organize, and tell someone. This is what therapists typically work with. This is what most psychological approaches address. And it is real, and it is important, and it is also only one type of memory. The human brain has multiple memory systems, and they are anatomically separate. They are stored in different structures. They are retrieved by different mechanisms, and critically, they do not automatically communicate. Narrative memory lives primarily in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. It is the memory of what happened, when, where, and who was involved. It is conscious, verbal, retrievable. But there is another memory system, one that does not store stories. It stores sensations, postures, muscle contractions, breathing patterns, the specific physical state your body was in when something overwhelming occurred. This is somatic memory, and it lives in the body's tissues, the nervous system, the implicit memory structures of the brain, the amygdala, the cerebellum, the brainstem. Structures that predate language, structures that predate conscious thought, structures that have absolutely no interest in your narrative. Here is the most important thing I can tell you about somatic memory. It does not know time has passed. Narrative memory can say, that was then, this is now. Somatic memory cannot make that distinction. When the body encounters a cue that resembles the original threatening experience, a tone, a smell, a posture, a quality of light, it responds as if the threat is present, now, in this room, at this moment. That is not irrationality. That is not being stuck. That is a biological system, doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is not that the system is broken. The problem is that the system got an update it never got to complete. To understand why trauma gets stuck in the body, we need to understand the nervous system. Specifically, we need to understand Stephen Porges's Polyvagal Theory, published in 1994 and one of the most paradigm-shifting ideas in trauma neuroscience. Before Porges, the standard model of the autonomic nervous system was binary. You had the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, and the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. Threat on, threat off. Two states, two switches. Porges discovered something that changed everything. The vagus nerve, the longest nerve in the body, running from the brainstem through the heart, lungs, and gut, is not one system, it is two. And those two systems evolved at completely different times for completely different purposes. The older branch, what Porges calls the dorsal vagal system, evolved in ancient reptiles. Its response to overwhelming threat is shutdown, immobilization, collapse. You have seen this in animals. The mouse going limp in the cat's mouth, playing dead. This is not a choice. It is the nervous system's last resort when fight and flight are both impossible. The newer branch, the ventral vagal system, evolved in mammals. It governs social engagement, connection, the ability to read faces, regulate voice tone, feel safe with other humans. When the ventral vagal system is online, you feel present, connected, regulated, safe. Between these two is the sympathetic system, fight or flight, the middle response. Porges describes these three as a hierarchy. Under normal conditions, the ventral vagal system is in charge, social, connected, regulated. Under moderate threat, the sympathetic system activates, mobilized, alert, ready for action. Under overwhelming threat, when fight and flight both fail, the dorsal vagal system takes over, shut down, freeze, collapse, dissociation. Now here is where this becomes directly relevant to trauma. Trauma, particularly early trauma, repeated trauma, or trauma where escape was impossible, does not just activate these states temporarily, it gets them stuck. The nervous system that was mobilized for fight or flight and never got to complete that response stays in a state of chronic sympathetic activation. Hypervigilance, anxiety, reactivity, the inability to relax. The nervous system that went into shutdown and was never able to come back out stays in a state of chronic dorsal vagal collapse, numbness, dissociation, depression, feeling absent from your own life. And critically, the ventral vagal system, the system that allows you to feel safe and connected with other people, goes offline, which is why one of the most consistent experiences of people with trauma histories is the specific difficulty of feeling safe, even when they are safe, even when they know they are safe. The body has a different opinion, and the body is louder. In the 1970s, a psychologist named Peter Levine was watching animals in the wild. Specifically, he was watching what happened after a prey animal survived a predator encounter. And he noticed something that would become the foundation of somatic trauma therapy. After the threat passed, after the gazelle escaped the cheetah, the animal did something very specific. It shook, violently, the entire body trembling, shuddering, discharging. And then, it returned to grazing, as if nothing had happened. Levine asked the question that changed trauma therapy. Why don't animals get PTSD? They face the same life-threatening experiences. They experience the same nervous system activation. But they do not carry it forward. They discharge it, and they return to baseline. His answer, which he spent decades researching and developing into somatic experiencing, was this: animals complete the biological response that the threat activated. Humans uniquely interrupt it. When your nervous system mobilizes for fight or flight, when adrenaline surges, muscles contract, heart races, body prepares for violent action, that is a biological charge. An enormous amount of energy is mobilized in the body for a specific purpose: survival action. If that action occurs, if you fight, if you flee, if the response completes, the energy discharges. The nervous system returns to baseline. The animal shakes it off and grazes. But what happens when the action cannot occur? When you are a child and you cannot fight back. When you are in a situation where flight is impossible. When the threat is coming from someone you love and need. When you freeze, which is what the body does when neither fight nor flight is available. The energy does not discharge. It stays, held in the body's tissues, in the muscles that contracted, in the breath that was cut off, in the posture that collapsed, in the voice that could not make a sound. Levine calls this the trauma vortex, the unfinished biological response cycling in the body, unable to complete, unable to discharge, keeping the nervous system in the state it adopted at the moment of the original threat. This is why trauma symptoms are so bodily. The chronic muscle tension, the constricted breathing, the startle response, the freeze in situations that feel similar, the hypervigilance that cannot turn off even in objectively safe environments. These are not psychological metaphors. They are the literal, physical residue of a biological response that was activated and never completed. And this is why talking about it, as necessary and valuable as it is often not enough. Because talking addresses the narrative, the story, the cortex, but the energy is stored below the cortex. In the body, in the nervous system, in systems that predate language by hundreds of millions of years. And those systems do not speak in words. In 2014, psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk published what would become the most influential book in trauma psychology of the last 30 years. The Body Keeps the Score. The title itself is the entire thesis. Van der Kolk had been working with trauma survivors for decades. Veterans, survivors of childhood abuse, people with complex PTSD, and he kept encountering the same phenomenon. People who had processed their trauma narratively, who could tell the story with coherence and even with some distance, whose bodies still reacted as if the trauma were ongoing. He began using brain imaging, specifically neuroimaging studies that allowed him to watch what happened in the brain when trauma survivors were asked to recall their experiences. What he found was extraordinary. When a trauma survivor recalled their experience, the areas of the brain associated with body sensation and emotional response lit up with enormous intensity. Broca's area, the speech center, the part of the brain responsible for putting experience into words, went offline. The body was responding fully. The distress was completely present, neurologically. But the capacity to speak about it, the capacity to put it into language, was literally shut down. Van der Kolk called this speechless terror, the experience of being completely flooded with the physiological reality of the trauma, with no access to the verbal processing that might allow the experience to be integrated. This single finding has profound implications for how we understand trauma treatment. It means that for many trauma survivors, in the moments when trauma is most present, when the body is most activated, language is least available. The very tool that talk therapy relies on goes offline at the exact moment it would be most needed. Van der Kolk also documented what he called the thalamic dysfunction in trauma. The thalamus, the brain's relay station, is responsible for integrating sensory information into a coherent sense of present moment experience, a sense of now. In trauma survivors, this integration is disrupted. Sensory information that resembles the original trauma, a smell, a sound, a particular quality of touch, bypasses the cortex entirely and activates the threat response directly, without any story, without any narrative, without any mediation from the thinking mind. The body simply responds, before thought, before language, before any possibility of the rational mind intervening and saying, "This is safe, you are safe, that was then, and this is now." The body keeps the score, not as a metaphor, as a neurobiological fact. I want to bring all of this back to daily life, because what I have just described might sound clinical, neurological, distant from the specific texture of your own experience. But I want you to see if any of these resonate. Have you ever had a physical reaction? A racing heart, a tightening chest, a sudden urge to leave, in a situation that you knew consciously was completely safe, where the rational part of you was watching the reaction happen and saying, "There is no reason for this," and yet the body was producing it with complete conviction? Have you ever noticed that certain people, their tone, their physical presence, even the way they hold themselves, produce a specific physical response in you before you have had a single conscious thought about them? A tightening, a shrinking, an impulse to become very still or to leave immediately before you know why. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation, particularly a conflict, and felt a specific quality of shutdown happen inside you, where words became unavailable, where thought became difficult, where you found yourself saying nothing or saying something completely different from what you meant because something in you simply went offline? Have you ever been touched, even gently, even lovingly, and had a part of you want to leave your own body, where something closed off or went away, even as you wanted to stay present? Have you ever felt a pervasive sense of being on guard, not about anything specific, but as a general quality of existing, where relaxation itself feels unsafe, where the absence of tension is more alarming than its presence? If any of these resonated, what you were experiencing was not weakness, was not irrationality, was not a failure of your psychological work. You were experiencing your nervous system responding to somatic memory, your body recognizing something your mind had not yet consciously registered. Your biology doing precisely what it was designed to do, protect you, based on a map of threat that was accurate once and has not yet been updated. The body keeps the score, and until the body's score is addressed, directly, somatically, at the level of sensation and nervous system, the story the mind tells about it will remain incomplete. Psychiatrist Daniel Siegel introduced one of the most practically useful concepts in trauma therapy, the window of tolerance. And I want to explain it because understanding it changes how you relate to your own reactions. The window of tolerance describes a zone of nervous system arousal within which you can function, process, feel, and relate. Inside this window, you can think clearly. You can feel emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You can be in relationship without losing yourself. You can process difficult experiences without dissociating or flooding. Above the window, hyper-arousal, anxiety, panic, rage, the inability to think. The body flooded with sympathetic activation. fight and flight competing for priority, the rational mind going offline because survival has claimed all available resources. Below the window, hypoarousal, numbness, shutdown, dissociation, the inability to feel. The dorsal vagal freeze response, the specific quality of being present in body but absent from experience. Here is what trauma does to the window of tolerance. It narrows it. A person who has not experienced significant trauma has a wide window. They can tolerate a broad range of emotional and physiological states without being pushed outside it. A person with significant trauma history has a narrow window. Small provocations push them above or below. What would be a manageable reaction for someone with a wide window becomes a flooding or a shutdown for someone whose window has been narrowed by repeated experiences of overwhelming threat. This is not a character deficiency. It is a neurological consequence of the specific experiences the nervous system was exposed to. A nervous system that learned repeatedly that the world is dangerous, that people are not safe, that threat can come without warning. That nervous system built its window accordingly. The goal of somatic trauma work is not to remove reactions. It is to widen the window, to expand the range of experience the nervous system can tolerate without going into survival mode, to build the capacity to feel more without being overwhelmed by it, to develop the regulation that allows the body to return to baseline after activation, the thing trauma prevented it from learning to do. Now, I want to give you something practical, not a 10-step program, not a list of things to do that will fix everything, but the actual mechanisms of somatic healing, what the research shows actually addresses trauma at the level of the body, and what you can begin engaging with right now. The first mechanism is titration. Peter Levine's most important clinical insight was that trauma cannot be healed by flooding, by going into the full experience all at once. It is healed in small doses, touching the edge of the activation, then coming back, then touching it again, then coming back. Each time, the nervous system learns that it can approach the difficult material and return safely. Each time, the window expands fractionally. Each time, the body learns that the response can be entered and exited, that it is not permanent. The second mechanism is pendulation, the practice of deliberately moving attention between the activated, difficult sensations and a resource, a part of the body that feels safe, neutral, or even pleasant. The chest that tightens, and the feet that feel solid on the floor. The throat that constricts, and the hands that are warm and present. This movement between activation and resource is what allows the nervous system to begin processing what it could not process during the original experience. The third mechanism is completion, the unfinished biological response, the impulse to run, to fight, to push away, to curl into protection that was activated during the original threat and never completed. In somatic work, this is gently, slowly, supported to complete, not dramatically, not through reliving, but through allowing the body to make the movement it wanted to make and was prevented from making. The arms that wanted to push away and couldn't. The legs that wanted to run and were frozen. The voice that wanted to cry out and was silenced. When these impulses are allowed to complete, slowly, with support, within the window of tolerance, the biological charge that has been held in the body's tissues for years begins to discharge. The fourth mechanism is resourcing. Deliberately building the experience of safety in the body, not through affirmation, not through positive thinking, through sensation, through noticing what safety actually feels like in the body when it is present. The expanded chest, the lowered shoulders, the breath that goes all the way down, and spending time there deliberately. The nervous system learns safety the same way it learned threat, through repeated experience. Resourcing is the practice of giving it that experience, intentionally and consistently, until the window begins to widen. These approaches are at the core of somatic therapies: somatic experiencing, sensorimotor psychotherapy, EMDR, trauma-sensitive yoga. They are not alternatives to psychological understanding. They work best alongside it. But they address what talk therapy alone cannot reach: the body's held experience, the nervous system's learned state, the biological residue of what happened. I want to close with something I want you to carry with you. If your body still reacts to things your mind has already processed, your body is not failing you. Your body is not stuck. Your body is not broken. Your body is not evidence that you cannot heal. Your body is keeping a record, a faithful, precise, biological record of what it needed to survive. And it is waiting, with extraordinary patience, for the conditions that will allow it to complete what it started. Those conditions are not more analysis, not more understanding, not a better explanation of the past. They are safety, presence, the slow, patient work of teaching the nervous system what it never got to learn: that the threat has passed, that the body can return to rest, that it is allowed, finally, completely, to let go. That is the work, and it is possible, not because of willpower, not because of insight alone, but because the body that learned to survive can learn to live. If this video helped you understand something you have been living with, subscribe and hit the bell. Every week on Soul Fuel, I bring you psychology and neuroscience like this. Real, research-backed, designed to change how you understand your own mind. And I want to hear from you. Where do you feel stress or emotion most strongly in your body? The chest, the stomach, the throat, the shoulders? Tell me in the comments, because your answer might help someone else recognize what they have been carrying. Take care of yourselves. I will see you next week.